Hello and welcome back to Echo. We will be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is right after um, they run into Jenna after the whole smoke monster incident in the what could be assumed as the dining room. Yeah. So, well, let's continue and see what happens. There's a rhythmic throbbing in my head, but it's hard to decide if it's coming from inside my head or outside. The next sense that comes back to me is touch. I feel a cold, hard surface under my back. Probably wood, judging by the way my claws sink into it. I shift around a little, but I don't feel like getting up just yet. The smell is musty and old. I'm reminded of my grandpa's woodshed, a place that I'd often go to when I played hide and seek. The drumming sound continues, and the rhythm makes me think that it's definitely coming from outside my body. It sounds tribal in a way. Where am I? On the edges of my memory are troubling images of endless halls and rooms, the smell of decay, and a noose. But I feel like if I block it out and just go back to sleep, I can erase all of it. I almost succeed, but then something brings me right out of my reverie. Carl? Chase? I grimace, the voice reminding me of something dark and cloudy. Help! The much louder yelp that follows has me rolling to my side, cracking my eyes open blearily. I'm in a dark room, very dark, the only source of light coming from what looks like a candle on a bedside table. A large bed sits next to it. I'm laying near the foot of the bed, and opposite of me I can barely make out a wall next to which is a wooden box. Help! Raven's plaintive moans force me to my feet, my joints cracking uncomfortably. As I drag my foot to stand up under me, a blinding pain flashes up my leg, sending bright white across my vision. I let out a muffled scream of pain behind my clenched teeth, closing my eyes as I wait for it to subside. Memories are starting to flow back to me. There's a doorway in front of me, and I start to make my way towards it, hopping slowly on my left foot, holding the right off the ground. I come to a small archway, one that branches to my left into a corridor of darkness. Right in front of me, however, is a set of stairs. Light glows at the bottom, and I'm pretty sure that's where Raven's voice is coming from. In fact, I'm pretty sure I can hear other voices coming from there as well. I look down on my ankle, wincing as I see that it's gotten even bigger, more than twice its original size. I'm starting to think that it's more than a sprain. As I make my way down the stairs, cringing with every light hop, my stomach starts to sink. I remember now the weird mansion that we were just in, the doors and hallways, and the smoke monster. And the door we just went through, whatever's happening to us isn't over yet. When I reach the bottom of the stairs, I find Jenna and Carl standing around a tall brown wardrobe. As I stand there, breathing heavily, Carl turns to me. Chase! He immediately rushes to my side, his hooves clopping loudly against the wooden floor. I think he's simply coming over to support me, but he wraps me up in a hug. God, I kept worrying that one of us is gonna disappear. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, I'm fine. I was upstairs in a bedroom, I think. The anxiety I'm feeling over the whole situation goes away just a little, absorbed into the soft warmth of Carl's body. Over Carl's shoulder, I can see Jenna watching us, her eyes narrowed, expression dark. I'm about to ask her what's wrong when I hear a loud bang from inside the wardrobe. Guys, are you still there? I think something touched me. Jenna turns back to the wardrobe, silent for a moment, then bends down to look at something. Guys? I hear a metallic click, then Jenna jumps back as one of the doors swings open and a black and white blur falls out like a rock. Raven face plants neatly into the wooden floor. He stays there a moment, moaning into the planks before Jenna bends over to help him up. Are you alright? Er, yeah. I just I just felt like something grabbed me. I look back into the wardrobe to find a very bare and empty wooden compartment. I'm inclined to believe him, though, after everything that's happened. What? Where are we? It's a good question, and now with the excitement over, I take the opportunity to look around as well. Everything is wooden. The walls, the floor, the ceiling. There's a large rug on the floor covered in colorful patterns and shapes. It reminds me of the art projects we do in elementary school when learning about the natives. There's a big stone fireplace and two rug covered chairs in front of it. Jenna gingerly shuts the wardrobe. So, a log cabin. Does everyone remember where we were before? Yeah, that mansion place. So, we're still stuck in this dimension thing? I sigh, rubbing my face with one hand while I lean against Carl with the other. I'd long ago given up on trying to figure out what exactly the hell is going on. Like Carl said earlier, we just have to keep moving and hope we get out of here. What's that sound? The drumming that I had thought was coming from within my head has started up again. Drums? The husky moves towards the wall, which consists of several logs stacked horizontally on top of each other. I can't see anything. The cracks are filled with stuff. I look around again, this time more carefully. Right in front of me is a large log door, not unlike the one we initially came through. On my left side, separated by the stairs, is what looks like the kitchen side of the room. In it, there's a small table with two chairs on either side. There's also a big black wood burning stove next to a few shelves, which are full of pots and pans. Various tools and furniture clutter up the rooms. And there's a window. I point it out to Carl. Look, let's try and see out through there. Carl pulls me into the familiar position on his back before clopping over to the window. The sound's a bit louder with my added weight. Jenna and Raven follow behind. There's a ledge next to the window, thankfully, and Carl lets me sit on it. I turn to look out the window while the others crowd around me, resting their hands on the wooden bench. The first thing I notice is a flickering light in the distance, about 100 yards away. It casts out across the ground around it, shadows from the rocks and bushes dancing about with the movement of the illumination. It's definitely a fire, a large one, probably a bonfire. The blackness around the fire is unnatural, though, just like what I saw through the windows in the mansion. It's inky and thick, and has the oppressive air of being almost alive. No other light comes from what I presume to be the sky, that fire being the only signal that anything exists outside the cabin. A fire, Raven says redundantly. The drumming, it's coming from it. Carl reaches out, but his hand looks to immediately press against something. I reach out too and feel a solid flat surface where a plane of glass might be set up, but it's clear there's nothing visible there. Observe, accept, move on. Hey, look. I look up in time to see something dark flash across the fire. It disappears into the darkness to the right of the flame, though. What was that? Maybe it was a tumbleweed or something? No, it was jumping, whatever it was. I feel a prickling along my neck, and now I'm not really into the idea of just staring out into the darkness. But then it happens again, and I see what Jenna's saying. The dark shape starts at the left side of the fire before passing in front of it. I get a brief impression of a tail and ears, legs, and arms, pumping as if jogging in place. It moves past the flames, then disappears into the darkness again. Something's out there. We continue to watch, but the drumbeat dies down, and, after a minute, it's clear nothing's moving around out there anymore. What was that? Well, Carl glances at Jenna. The drumbeat sounds kind of native, don't you think? He's clearly waiting for Jenna to confirm. Maybe. There's an awkward silence before Carl coughs. Well, let's think. We weren't able to get out of the mansion until we found the letter, right? He looks at me. Yeah, I respond automatically. Well, if that's the case, then maybe we have to find something in here, right? I guess that would make sense. But what are we supposed to find? Another letter? Yeah, didn't someone tell you about finding something that it would open the door? Yeah, and I think it makes sense that whoever set this up would do it in the same way, right? I sigh and stopped staring out the window, my back sore from the twisting motion. I sat straight up on the bench and looked back into the cabin. Well, if we're supposed to find another letter, there's a bunch of places to hide it. Maybe we should try the door first? Jenna walks over to the door and looks it up and down before reaching out to slide back a rusty bolt. To my surprise, it moves with only a little resistance. Are we sure we want to go out there? I mean, we don't know who that is running around. Jenna hesitates, then heaves back on the door, but it doesn't budge, not even an inch. Jenna sighs. Raven bounds up next to Jenna before enthusiastically yanking back on the handle as well. Again, the door holds fast. Of course. Jenna stares at the door for a moment before turning to us. Let's take a look around upstairs. If we're supposed to find something, we should start from top to bottom. Agreed. Carl bends down to pick me up, but I rest a paw on his shoulder. Wait, I don't want you to have to drag me everywhere, let alone up and down the stairs. He stops mid-stoop, his face level with mine as he looks at me. You sure? I don't really want to leave you alone down here. As I look back at him, I can't help but note the difference that I'd noticed earlier. His face has harder lines, his fur duller, his eyes somehow deeper, wiser. Are you alright? I break out of my trance and blink. Yeah. I'll just stay down here and look around where I can. Jenna and Raven are already making their way up the stairs, Raven going on about how his family used to have their own log cabin. Alright, but shout if you need anything. I smile, at least I feel like some parts of Carl are still familiar. After the ram heads upstairs, I lean back on my little bench, letting my head tilt back as I close my eyes. Even in this new environment, everything is still feeling surreal. I've come to welcome the feeling, though. It's a nice little barrier to everything that's happening right now. In some ways, I can still pretend that this is a dream. Hell, even now I'm thinking it's a dream, that I'm somehow stuck in one of my paralysis. Maybe I'm in a hospital right now, and they're trying to figure out how to pull me out of it. That thought has me feeling like I'm being watched and the fur prickles around my neck. I guess it would be kind of awkward if all of those doctors are watching me right now. Maybe Carl and Jenna are there too, and Leo, Flynn, and TJ. The feeling gets stronger, so I turn back around to look at the window. It's still silent, and the lonely little flame in the distance continues to flicker around the rocks and sagebrush. It makes me wonder how endless this world is. If we're in some kind of ghost dimension being manipulated by what are basically ghost gods, then will this whole ordeal be never-ending? The thought twists my stomach, so I stop thinking about it. I turn back around and force my eyes to start scanning the kitchen from top to bottom, looking for something, anything that might stand out. I assume I'm looking for a letter. But again, if the rules are limitless in this world, then there's no telling what it might be that we're supposed to find next. I think about vocally asking James or whoever the hell it is for some help. Maybe some kind of hint at least, but there's no way I'm gonna do that without the others with me. I'm thinking about pushing off the bench to start limping around the kitchen when a small scratching sound catches my attention. I hold still, then lean back, tilting my ear towards the sound. It's muffled, and a bit distant, but it's coming from directly to my left. Is it happening on the outside of the cabin? My fur prickles and I think about calling Carl. I can hear the three of them stomping around, talking to each other in muffled voices from upstairs. I turn around again, this time a little more tentatively. The dancing bonfire continues to glow quietly, no other movement aside from the shadows. This time, a rustling sound comes from that same spot, and I instinctively turn my eyes in its direction. Carl? I raise my voice a little bit more, but their conversation carries on upstairs, as if I hadn't said anything. I look up at the ceiling, then back out the window. The rustling sound continues, this time in earnest, as if something's twisting around in the brush. It's coming from just out of the view of the window, right at the base of the house. I hold my breath, then lean forward, stretching my neck up to get a better angle and peer down into the darkness. It's really too dark to see much, or at least, that's what I was thinking. Almost as if it has its own glow, a bright white face stares back at me from the blackness. My mind blanks and my body seizes up. And just like that, I'm in a paralysis, forced to stare down at the white face, the black eyes. It's as if the thing is holding me with its gaze, but as it does, its features become more definable. I see tall ears, a long pointy muzzle, a band of some type across the thing's forehead. Stop it. Something says it very deliberately, through their teeth right in my ear. At the same time, the face flickers and fuzzes, like a TV picture with bad reception. The head twitches and shifts, then the muzzle opens and... The cackle that comes forth is all at once terrifying and familiar, and at that moment, I'm released. My vocal cords start working at the same time, and I let out a scream as I fall backwards. I land on the wooden floor with a loud thud that shakes the pots and pans on the shelves. The room spins, and I feel like I'm coming right out of a dream, like I've been sleeping for ages. The next thing I know is that I'm surrounded by the three faces of my friends, all looking down at me. Carl grabs me under the arms and pulls me into a sitting position, his face worried. But there's something else too. Anger? What happened? I'm startled by his abruptness, and I stammer through the answer. It was a face, out the window. What did it say? Carl, what are you doing? Raven reapproaches the ram gently, his ears falling. Carl glances at the husky, then at Jenna, who's been silent so far, then back at me, slowly letting go. Sorry, I was just worried about you. What did you see? Did it say anything? It takes me a moment to find my voice. No, it didn't say anything, just laughed. What did it look like? A fox maybe? Had a band over its head. Carl's eyes narrow. Hey, I found something. We all look up at Raven as he holds up a white piece of paper. What is that? Carl stands up, staring hard at the paper in Raven's hand. I don't know. Looks like a photocopy of a newspaper. Let's see. Raven turns towards the candle sitting on the desk. Jenna stands behind him. Meseta boy missing after... Whoa! Raven flinches back as the paper catches fire, illuminating the entire cabin room. Our shadows dance across the log walls. The paper which Raven had dropped flutters to the floor, a tongue of angry flame eating it up completely before it hits the floor. We all stare at the smoldering flake of ash on the ground. Raven, are you kidding me? What? I wasn't even that close to the candle. That might have been what we needed. But Raven stares at his hands, looking forlornly between them and the candle which seems to flicker innocently on the table. I rest my face in my hands. Well, what do we do now? He wasn't near the candle. I pull my head out of my hands, not because of what Jenna said, but because of the way she said it. Huh? I've got a side angle here. You were at least 2 feet away. There's a brief silence. Jenna, what are you talking about? I don't know, Carl. What am I talking about? Jenna turns to the ram, eyes narrowed, teeth just slightly bared. I look at Carl. He's frowning, a concerned look on his face. Jenna, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm saying there's no way that candle burned that paper. Carl's concerned expression deepens, but there's also a hint of condescension there. What else would have done it, Jenna? This time the silence is heavy. I'm baffled by the interaction they're having so far. Judging by the look on Raven's face, so is he. Hey guys, I'm sorry I burned it, but maybe we can figure something out from the title? Meseta Boy Missing? I look at Jenna. Oh yeah, Meseta. Isn't that your tribe or... Yep. I feel my face flush as I wonder if I'm being insensitive, like I think she knows everyone from the tribe. But what does that mean? A lot of people go missing out here. Well, it could have something to do with James, right? How do we know that? I look at Carl. Are you okay, man? You've been acting really weird since we got here. I think we're all acting a little different after getting here, don't you think? Carl glances at Jenna. Are we fighting again? Staring at the ash of the ground, something I should have realized earlier suddenly hits me. Wait a minute. That newspaper, it kinda looked like something that came out of the crawlspace tubs. What do you mean? I was looking through some of the artifacts that Carl's family saved from way back when, for that project I was doing. It seems like years ago at this point. I snap my fingers. And some of the stuff was missing from it, like pages ripped out from Carl's mom's notebook that had photocopies of old newspapers. So was that just a clipping from the notes? Maybe, I don't know, but John was native, so maybe it has to do with him? I think back to the small fox I saw through the window, the band across his forehead. Was that John? So, the ghost just ripped out the pages to show you in this nightmare world? Why didn't he just point them out to you in the real world? I don't really have an answer for that. Then we wouldn't have to be going through this shit right now. Ghost rules? Raven shrugs. And what if that was our key out here? Well, they can't just leave us here, right? We don't know anything about where we are, or what these things are capable of. So what now? Just sit around and wait for something else to happen? Carl suddenly sighs. Well, I'm gonna look around some more. You guys do whatever you want. Again, I'm taken aback by Carl's demeanor. I've never seen him act like this before. It's like he's a different person. Without another word, he turns on his hoof and walks away. Over the next several hours, we search the cabin from top to bottom. I hobble around the ground floor, careful not to look out the window even when the drumming starts up, again at a few points. I check all the shelves, under the chairs and tables in the stove, in the pantry, between the cracks in the floor and walls. We don't find anything. At some point, I almost topple over after dozing off, and that's when we call off the search. There's some discussion as to where we should sleep, if we should do it in shifts. Jenna suggests that she stay up downstairs while the rest of us sleep, just in case something else happens. Carl suggests that I sleep in the bed upstairs because of my leg, and I have to agree with him. Raven stays downstairs with Jenna, making himself comfortable in one of the chairs. As Carl hobbles up the stairs with me on his back, Jenna watches us the whole way. I sit on the bed, watching as Carl moves about the room, looking behind the shelves and under the bed. Carl, I hate to ask again, but are you okay? He looks back at me. Yeah, I'm fine. I just want to make sure everything is safe for you. Thanks. It's just that you seem different, I guess. Carl looks at the ceiling, seeming to think. It's difficult to make him out in the darkness. Just like when he had a sheet over his head, I get the weird feeling that who I'm looking at might not be Carl. I think it's just that this has made me grow up. I realize how useless I've been. This is sort of an opportunity for me to actually do something, help people, you know? Yeah, it sounds nice, but I can't get rid of that nagging feeling that something is off. It's in the way he talks, the way he moves, right down to his facial expressions. I swing my legs gingerly onto the bed and lie back. Carl comes over to sit on the other side. Gonna sleep here too? Yeah, you need me to get around, so I'm gonna be by your side as much as possible. Alright, thanks. As we lay awkwardly on our backs for a moment, Carl suddenly turns on his side and pulls me into his chest. I'm surprised, and I turn instinctively so that he's spooning me. I guess it makes sense after our semi-confession back in the mansion. He nuzzles my neck, but again, the action is weirdly unnatural. Even with his big, warm body next to mine, it takes me a long time to fall asleep. I open my eyes and blearily, I can make out the dark cabin room. My heart sinks again at the realization of where I'm at, but it's more subdued this time. Guess I'm getting used to my new life. My mouth is dry, very dry, and I feel like I need to find water or I'm not going back to sleep. I sit up. Carl's moved back to his side of the bed at this point, laying out on his back, snoring. Quietly, I get out of the bed, wincing at how creaky the floorboards are. I make my way down the stairs, eyes adjusted to the point where I can barely make out the ledges. When I reach the ground level, I see that Raven is splayed out on the carpet, snoring as well. I shake my head before moving to the kitchen. Jenna isn't there, and I wonder where she might be at. Was she in that other room upstairs? Maybe I just missed her when I was distracted by Raven. Looking around, I see a small cup sitting on the table. I'm almost positive it wasn't there before, but maybe Raven or Jenna had set it there. Walking over to it, I'm relieved to see that it's filled with what looks like water. I pick it up and sniff at it, not really getting a hint of anything. Tentatively, I take a sip, and immediately spit it out. It's salty, putrid. It tastes like... I jump, and some of the liquid splashes to the floor. I gingerly set down the cup, looking into the opposite room. Everything is still in the other room. I can't even hear Raven snoring anymore. This time, I see the wardrobe move, the door specifically. I stare, wide-eyed. Everything falls still again, but I don't dare move. Jenna! I whisper loudly. It wouldn't make any sense why she'd be in there, but who else would it be? Ghosts, of course. I'm about to take a step forward, towards the stairs maybe, or at least wake Raven up, but that's when the small door creaks open. I freeze, all the fur on my body standing up. James? Words die on my tongue as something long and black slides out from behind the door. It dips down towards the ground, and only then does it vaguely take the shape of a foot. Another long black tendril follows, slightly ahead of the first one. When it touches the ground, it takes the shape of a hand, resting flat on the wooden floor. I choke and start to try and back away, but then the door explodes open, and I'm just barely able to make out a galloping black shape before it engulfs me. I collapse back onto the ground, twisting, trying to scream, but the thing is completely covering and smothering me. I choke and gag, feeling like I'm being suffocated, my arms pinned to my sides, my legs rigid. As I try to yank away from the thing, it feels like something is freed from my mouth, and I'm able to scream. Help! Get it off of me! Help! Chase! The surface underneath me becomes soft, the thing on top of me warm. Through bleary eyes, I look up at Carl, just able to make out the curve of his horns. Carl? I hear a movement at the doorway, and I glance in the direction to find Jenna standing there, hackles raised, teeth bared. Jenna? Before I know what's exactly going on, Jenna sprints across the room and jumps on the bed. Carl doesn't even have time to turn around before she snatches him by the horns and yanks his head back violently. The ram lets out a choking sound as he's dragged back and thrown to the floor. Jenna jumps off the bed after him. From the sounds of it, she lands on him. What follows is a series of thuds and smacks. Weakly, I pull myself to the foot of the bed, still completely disoriented. I knew, you motherfucking piece of shit! What I see is Jenna sitting on Carl's back, swinging her fists into his head while the ram tries to cover her up. You haven't changed at all! Jenna, stop! I roll off the bed, confused as to why I'm so weak. Pain shoots up my leg again, but this time I barely notice it. There's something around Jenna, something big and black, like a shadow, making her look much bigger than she actually is. Her fists swing and hit Carl with a force I didn't think she was capable of. Then she grabs Carl by the horns again and yanks back before slamming his face back into the floor. Jenna! I lunge forward, trying to pull myself between the two of them. Underneath me, Carl has gone limp. Just like Jenna, there's something black and shadowy around him as well, but it's fading, moving away. Jenna's still trying to get at Carl, reaching around me and snarling in my ear, a sound that makes my fur stand on end. Then she's gone. I look to my left and see Jenna being drawn back by Raven, his eyes wide with shock. What are you doing? Jenna struggles in the husky's grasp. I saw him! He was trying to fuck the otter! The otter? Jenna, stop! He was helping me! Raven continues to try and pull Jenna towards the door, but she continues to struggle. I was having a nightmare! Jenna, struggling, is losing some of its vigor, but she continues to snarl in Carl's direction. Raven, please get her out of here! The shadow around Jenna seems to shrink, and her face shows some doubt as she stares at the crumbled form of Carl. After a moment, she seems to let the husky lead her from the room, and I hear some soothing tones from Raven as he leads her down the stairs. I turn back to Carl, who has his arms around his head, face still buried in the ground. After a while, I see his shoulders heaving with sobs. Gently, I pull one of his arms back, and he looks up at me. This time, I recognize his face. I sit next to Carl on the bed, mopping up his face with his bloodied button-up shirt. He sits there silently, looking at his hands while I work. At least nothing's broken? Dude, what happened? I'm not sure if he's talking about what happened with Jenna, or just everything. I've been asking that same question since we got here. He looks at his hands again. It felt different. I sit back and look him over, satisfied with having cleaned up most of his face. You were acting different too. Like, it felt like I knew everything. I knew what I was doing. You were acting really confident. I agree and set his bloodied shirt off to the side. When I look back at him, he seems so sad and beaten down that I have to hug him. Dude, you're gonna make me start crying again. His voice cracks, but he hugs back anyway. I'm just glad you're back. I felt like I was talking to a stranger. Carl leans against me and sighs. I don't know if I'm glad though. It's like I just came down from a huge high. I rub his shoulders for a while before I venture forward with my guess. Was it James? I don't know. Maybe? Carl looks at his hands again, like he's questioning if they're even his. I just felt like I knew what I wanted, and when things didn't go the way that I thought they would, I'd get really pissed. He's silent for a while. I imagine contemplating what he'd just gone through. Jenna isn't really acting like herself either. Carl looks up at that. Yeah, I felt like whatever was in me, whatever it is, really hates what Jenna is doing for some reason. Carl looks around the room, scanning it with his dark green eyes. I feel like all of this is some kind of mental fight between James and whatever else is fighting against him. He looks back down at his hands. That's why we have to do all of this. He falls back into silence, and I don't ask any more questions, wanting to let him rest a bit. There's one nagging thought that had come to my mind, though. Kind of stupid, but what happened back in the mansion? You know, that thing between us? He looks up at me and I feel my face flush, looking away. I guess I'm wondering if any of that was real. I mean, if it was really you feeling that way. Carl doesn't say anything, so I'm forced to look up at him. When I do, he has a sad sort of smile on his face. Dude, I think that was the only part of me that was real. Despite where we are, despite everything that's happening, that somehow makes me incredibly happy. Happy enough to lean forward and kiss him. He kisses back, and while it's barely more than a peck, it has my entire body feeling warm. He puts his own arms around me after I pull back, and I rest my head on his shoulder. I feel like it's gonna try to come back though. I look at him. What, James? Whatever it is, I can already feel it, like it's on the edge of my mind. Do you think you can fight it? Carl sighs, then looks at me. Should I? What do you mean? I mean, it made me feel amazing. Like I could do anything. Maybe we need that. I frown. I don't know. Not only that, but it felt like I knew what to do. It might save us. He stares back into my eyes. I know it's not really me, but it'll probably only be for the time that we're here. I look away, thinking. Then, I'll be back to my old self. He squeezes my shoulder. But it's important to me what you think. We're in this together. I know what happens if you allow it to help. No, whether or not it made Carl feel good, I can't shake the bad feeling it gives me. I rest a hand on his. No, after everything that's happened, I don't trust whatever it is. Carl watches me closely. Seriously, we need to be more careful. Besides, I lean my hand against his shoulder again. We are in this together. We don't need that thing meddling with us to get through it. I feel some of the tension go out of Carl's muscles, and we wrap each other more tightly into our respective embraces. We sit there for a while, Carl absorbing what I just said. It's clear that whatever is influencing Carl, and probably Jenna, is powerful, and we have to be careful. Whatever he decides, I just pray it's the right decision. I wake up groggily, my head throbbing a bit from laying on the stiff pillow. Like the last time I woke up, it takes me a while to realize where I am. And just like last time, I get a sinking feeling in my stomach when I realize where that is. I lay on my side staring at the wall in front of me, watching shadows dance along the log bumps. It's depressing, though not as much as the last time. At some point, I guess I realized that there wasn't much I could do. I just go with it and hope something comes of it. At least there seems to be a goal in the mind of whatever had control of this. Whatever it was. Suddenly, I feel an arm slide over my hip, and I stiffen. Carl breathes into the back of my neck. You okay? I feel the soft warmth of Carl's body press up against my back. It's been a long, long time since I felt someone spoon me. Thinking about Leo, though, only makes my stomach knot up even more. Yeah. Carl picks up on it right away. His broad muzzle sneaks over my neck, and soon he's pressing his cheek against mine. I can feel him hesitating as he does it, his movements kind of jerky and awkward. I almost laugh, but I have to remind myself that Carl probably hasn't done this before, at least not since high school. Definitely not with a guy, at least. A hand slides over my side, close to my crotch. He doesn't go lower, though, and keeps it pressed against my body. It feels nice having someone close to me like this. Even though I'd given up on trying to understand the situation, I'm still scared about what's happening. I can feel Carl's heart beating hard against my back, and I wonder if he's thinking about the same thing. That's when I feel his very hard dick pressing against my ass. I almost laugh again. Here I am in a haunted ghost cabin, and my childhood friend is grinding up on me. Carl feels me tense up and lifts his hand away from my stomach. Sorry, is this not? I roll over abruptly to face him. His green eyes immediately look away from mine, and I see red creeping underneath his thin fur of his ear. I decide to go with the same technique I used last night and slide up against his soft body before pressing my lips against his. That seems to break the ice, and he immediately responds, pressing his tongue against my lips before I open them to let it in. Carl's surprisingly good at tongue kissing, better than Leo was anyway. It glides over my tongue before flicking against my teeth. I'm momentarily worried about how I hadn't brushed for at least 2 days now, but Carl doesn't seem to mind. He hasn't either, after all. He wraps his hand around my back, sliding one under my body so that he can wrap me in a full embrace. The feeling of being enveloped in Carl's soft and strong warmth makes my heart skip a beat, and pretty soon I'm just as hard as he is. While his hands toy with my tail, I get to work running my own hands under his shirt, gliding them along his firm belly before pushing his shirt up. Carl tenses and giggles. Oh fuck, that tickles! I pause and smirk at him. I barely touched you. I give his stomach a light prod, and he curls up a bit more, grabbing my wrist. Dude, I think I'm just not used to being touched like that. I apply both hands this time, running them like spiders up his stomach and chest. Dude, no! He twists and writhes under my hands, desperately trying to stifle his giggles before finally snatching up my hands by the wrists. I'm reminded how strong he is when he easily rolls me to my back, straddling my hips as he pins my hands above my head. You asshole! Carl's breathing heavily, letting out a little giggle every now and then. Sorry, I've just never seen someone get so... I pause as I hear some movement from downstairs, followed by what sounds like Raven's voice. I'm reminded of our situation when I see some flakes of blood crusted around Carl's nose and the big splotches on his shirt. I, guess we're being a little loud. Yeah. How's your nose? Carl automatically raises a hand to touch his nose. Meh. Hurts a little bit, but I'm okay. That's good. I lay there in silence for a few seconds, feeling like the moment is kind of ruined. I look again at the walls, remembering that we should be looking for something instead of messing around like this. What you looking at? Not sure. Hey, we should be finding something, right? Hmm? My crotch is starting to get a little uncomfortable under the weight of Carl's body. I mean, didn't that ghost, ancestor, whatever it was, tell you that we needed to find stuff? Carl rubs his nose. Yeah, in the last place we were in, at least. I guess it would be the same for this place, right? Unless it was what we already burned up? Yeah. Carl sits there quietly, thinking. Well, I think I might try to look downstairs. Do you want to stay up here and look around? Yeah. I want to get the other two to start looking too. The threat of Jenna hangs heavy in the air, and the way we're both obviously avoiding it makes it all the heavier. What about your ankle? I flex it around, the twinge a lot less sharp now, though the stiffness feels even worse. I think I'm okay. Let me try it out. Okay. Carl sits there for a while longer, then seems to suddenly realize that he needs to get off of me so that I can get up. He scrambles off awkwardly as I sit up and swing my legs over the side of the bed. Pressing my foot on the floor, the twinge that runs through my ankle is minuscule. Standing up, I'm able to put some pressure on it before it hurts too much. The problem is that I can't bend the joint at all, leaving me with an obvious lumbering limp. I think I'm okay. Can I get you downstairs at least? I warm to the concern in Carl's voice, though I don't really want him and Jenna anywhere near each other. Especially after what she might have just heard now. Nah, I want to test it out a bit more. I turn my head to look back at Carl and still see a worried look on his face. I'll call you if I need any help, okay? Carl purses his lips. Alright. The trip down the stairs is ponderous and awkward. I'm probably loud too, because when I reach the bottom, I find both Raven and Jenna already staring at me. Hey. Hey. Jenna doesn't say anything, continuing to watch me. We stare at each other awkwardly for a bit before she finally moves her head to look down at my leg. How's your leg? Oh, it's alright. A bit stiff, though. I grasp at the opportunity to talk about anything other than what we're obviously avoiding. I think I should be able to walk normally, maybe in a few days. Hopefully in a few days, we'll be out of here so that you can do that. Yeah. Jenna is definitely not herself right now. Her eyes are vacant, dull, and it's hard to explain, but they lack that mischievous and compassionate look that I'm used to seeing. Her voice is weird too. It's deeper, more husky. We'll be out of here by then. Raven says it with a grin as he leans back in the chair he's sitting in. Yeah, actually, I wanted to talk to you guys about that. About what? About how to get out of here. And how do we do that? Well, I was thinking that last time we were able to unlock the door, all we had to do was find that letter. Raven blinks at me. So, we find a letter? Or something like that. We just need to find something, I think. We did find something. I look over at Jenna. Huh? I said we did find something. Carl burned it. Oh, well, I don't think Carl burned it. He did. I pause. But there's gotta be something else, or maybe whatever's doing this has a way of putting something else here. The others don't say anything. I don't know, but we can't just sit here. Looking around is the least we can do. Where is Carl? Jen is standing up now, looking at the ceiling. Faintly, I can hear the clopping of Carl's hooves on the soft wood. He's looking around upstairs. Jenna continues to look up at the ceiling, her face stony. Let's start in this room. Raven stands up and starts walking along the wall, looking up and down the logs, prodding at the spaces between. Jen is still looking up at the ceiling, and I worry that she's going to try and go upstairs. Hey Jenna, can you help me look around in the kitchen? Jenna looks back at me. Huh? My ankle still kind of hurts. It would be nice to be able to lean on someone if I need to walk far. Like, to the kitchen. Jenna pauses before moving over to my side. She stands there stoically, and I awkwardly wrap an arm around her shoulders. Thanks. Yeah. We amble slowly to the kitchen. Jenna stops in the middle of the room and waits. I guess I'll start in the cabinets. My voice goes up at the end, like I'm asking a question. Jenna doesn't say anything, so I stumble away from her, again awkwardly before finding support on the wooden pantry. I hesitantly start opening some of the cupboards, feeling a lot less into the idea than I was just a few minutes earlier. Jenna stares out the window. So, are you okay? She finally looks back at me, frowning. I'm fine. Why? You're being really distant. Do you need me to stand next to you? No, I mean, you seem like you're not really here mentally. I'm sorry. I open another pantry door to a set of glass mugs. Is it something to do with Carl? I know that Jenna's going through something similar to what Carl is. I just have no idea what's doing it or why. Something that wants this to go as unsmoothly as possibly, clearly. I don't have a problem with Carl. I mean, what you did yesterday. I just have a problem with the way he acts. He could do a lot if he put his mind to it. It takes me a moment to realize that she's talking about what happened before. All of this. So, you attacked him? What? No, that was something else. I turn around and finally see something familiar about Jenna. Some life in her eyes. Maybe all I have to do is talk about stuff before this whole warp to the ghost dimension. I mean, he tries, he just has problems. Shouldn't a psychology major know that? Jenna looks away from me. I guess, but I'm not a therapist. So what? So I don't know. No, I mean, shouldn't anyone have sympathy? I'd have a little more sympathy if he'd actually try and get help. He has, but it's not that easy. Again, I don't feel like I should be explaining this to someone who has 4 years of psychology under her belt. I tried to get help, but I didn't feel any better for years. Jenna doesn't say anything. Carl's problems didn't really start until his first year of college. I keep pulling open cupboards, my heart sinking a little more each time there's nothing inside. I mean, yeah, he had problems before, but it's only getting worse for him. Well, it doesn't matter what I think about Carl right now. We're trying to find a way out of here, and screwing around isn't going to help. Jenna says it in such a way that I feel like it was supposed to be pointed. There's little doubt now that she heard us messing around upstairs. I sigh and reach up to pull open the last cabinet. He's not who you think he is. It's so quiet and deep that I'm not sure that it's Jenna that said it. I turn around, but she's already on the other side of the room, standing next to the opposite set of pantries. Did you say something? She doesn't respond, so I stare at her for another few seconds before slowly turning back around. The fur on the back of my neck prickles at the idea of turning my back on her. Why do these damn ghosts have to be so subtle and cryptic? If that's what it is, of course. Seems like James had no trouble telling Carl about the whole clue-finding crap. Why couldn't they just tell him, or even Jenna, right now instead of just creeping me out? The kitchen isn't very big, so I run out of things to search through pretty quickly. I skip the area around the window, though, not having forgotten about what happened yesterday. Yesterday? I don't know how to keep track of time in this place. I look back over at Jenna, who's still in the same place, staring at the pantry. The thought that maybe I myself could be possessed momentarily passes through my mind. For some reason, I doubt it, even though I'm not sure why. I don't really feel like I'm of any interest to whatever it is that's doing this. At least not directly. As I continue to stare, I see something past Jenna, at the base of the stairs. A ram's horn curling out from around the corner to the entrance of the stairs. I stare for a moment. Hey, I'm gonna go upstairs. Jenna's head snaps back sharply to stare at me, and I swear I hear her neck crack. Just to see if he's found anything. I'll be back. I awkwardly sidle my way out of the kitchen towards the stairs, Jenna's gaze following me the entire way. Once I reach the base of the stairs, I find Carl standing right there. He jumps when I come around the corner and stands straight up, one hand resting against the wall. His eyes are red, and the short fur on his face is all mussed up. Carl? Are you okay? I whisper it, but Carl immediately turns around and starts back up the stairs quietly. I follow him, wondering what it could be. Did he find something horrific? I wouldn't be surprised at all if that were the case. Once we reach the top of the stairs, Carl heads straight for the bedroom. Carl, what happened? Did you find something? At that moment, he turns around and hugs me. It's so enveloping and firm that the air is almost crushed out of me. I grunt and freeze for a moment, listening to Carl huff into my chest. He's holding me like I'm something precious, like if he lets go, I'm going to be swept away somehow. I'm quiet for a few seconds, letting Carl get whatever this is out of his system. My arms are pinned down to my sides anyway, so it's not like I can respond physically. Hey, are you okay? It's a dumb question because none of us are okay. Carl finally lets go. He turns away from me right away to sit on the bed and put his face in his hands. My shirt is damp, and I look down to see two wet spots where his eyes had been. Tentatively, I sit down next to him at the foot of the bed and I put my hand on his back. Hey, what happened? Carl sniffs loudly, wiping his eyes before putting his face back down in his hands. The ram sighs before finally straightening up to lean back on his hands, looking away from me. I just feel like shit is all. Can I help? I just had a moment. I couldn't breathe. I keep rubbing his back, knowing that there really isn't anything I can do. A panic attack? How come? Lot of things. Carl shivers under my touch. And, I feel like everyone's mad at me. Why? No one's mad at you. Well, Jenna first of all, but I feel like everyone thinks that this was my fault or something. What? Why would any of this be your fault? He was probably right about Jenna, though. It's my house, my great whatever is. It's all just my shit. He sniffs. I don't know, just being alone gets me thinking about this stuff, about how I'm still fucking everything up. Dude, Jenna told us, fucked up things are happening everywhere, not just your house. I look around. Which I'm assuming we're still in. Maybe? I look back down at Carl. What brought all of this up? We're all just working together to get ourselves out of here. Carl wipes his face and sniffles noisily before sitting up straight. I wasn't finding anything, and I started thinking about what would happen if we never do find anything. That's not gonna happen. These things that are doing this are trying to tell us something, right? I don't know about that, man. They seem just as confused and angry as we are. Carl looks at me with his reddened eyes. It's like they're fighting too. Yeah, I guess they're having some issues. Carl reaches out and I let him pull me to the side. I don't resist and Carl chuckles. And it's just creepy being up here alone. I fit against him almost perfectly and I lay my head against his shoulder. Sorry. For what? I feel like I should be the strong one. Huh? And you've already seen me cry like twice. Hey, I don't believe in the strong one type of crap. I rest my hand on Carl's thigh, squeezing it. You're strong for the other person when they need it, and both people will need it eventually. Carl shifts against me and he laughs nervously. You're talking about us like we're a thing. Aren't we a thing? Look at what we're doing right now. I don't know, man. It's hard to say when you're stuck in a haunted cabin. I feel him press his nose to my head, inhaling. This place is doing weird things to me. I squeeze his thighs again. Yeah, we can talk about it when we actually get out of here, when this stuff isn't fucking with our heads. So, we are a thing, but just in the ghost dimension. Sure, for now. I'm fine with that. For now. He breathes in deeply. You smell good. I snort. What do I smell like? Like the ocean. Dude, I'm a river otter. Besides, the river and ocean smells bad. Carl nibbles into the side of my neck, and I gasp, trying to pull away from him. He pulls me back easily with his superior strength before pushing me back onto the bed, teasing at my neck with his warm nose. Carl, stop! I hiss at him, trying not to burst out laughing. He mumbles against my neck. Hey, I'm just getting you back for earlier. I giggle helplessly behind a closed mouth, trying to keep quiet. I can't deny I like this, but Jenna's criticism just minutes earlier has me feeling hesitant. He starts to move lower, but at that moment I hear a metal clang echo up the stairs. We both pause, and Carl's large ears are perked under his beanie. I prop myself up on my elbows and look towards the doorway. I guess we should get back to searching. Yeah. With that moment clearly over, Carl sits back up on the side of the bed while I straighten out my shirt. You found something? Raven's voice drifts faintly up the stairs. Carl and I look at each other. Hey, maybe we won't need to. You want to go check? Yeah, wait here a sec. If it's nothing, I'll come back up and help you look around, alright? Okay. Carl scoots to the side so that I can get off the bed. It takes a few minutes to get down the stairs on my stiff ankle. Once I get into the kitchen, I'm confronted with an odd scene. Jen is halfway into the wood-burning stove, reaching into the back, probably up into the metal tube. What are you doing? She found something! Raven's standing off to the side of the stove, bouncing on the balls of his feet. It's stuck. Jenna grunts as she adjusts herself, reaching in from a different angle. What is it? I hobble slowly across the room towards them. You need help? I realize he's talking to me, but I shake my head at the husky as I watch Jenna pull back and look into the opening of the stove. Goddamn thing, shouldn't be this hard to get. Maybe I can help? But Jenna's already plunging her head back in, head sticking out of the opening as she does. That seems to garner some success as she smirks. Ha! Got it! Then her whole body jerks as she's seemingly yanked into the opening. Raven yelps as Jenna grabs onto the side of the stove to keep from getting pulled in. Oh my gosh! Jenna? My voice rises in panic as I see her get yanked a second time. Raven automatically steps up next to her and grabs her arm. A third yank almost pulled him off his feet. I run over to help and wrap my arm around Jenna's waist to get a better grip. Another jolt and I'm able to feel the power of whatever has a hold on Jenna myself. What's happening? I hear a thud and rustling in the stove, like something's turning over angrily and repeatedly. The image of some kind of caged animal passes through my mind and a sense shivers up my spine. No, you fucking don't! I look up at the fox and I notice that she doesn't look scared at all. Instead, she looks pissed off, her lips drawn back in a snarl, teeth bared viciously. She's talking to whatever's in the stove. I feel the muscles in my body tense up and writhing under my hands as she twists to get free. I look around her body at Raven. His face, in contrast, is a mask of horror. Raven! His wide eyes snap to mine. Get a grip around her body, and we'll pull out at the same time. He briefly lets go of Jenna's arm to lean down on her other side and wrap his arms around her waist. Okay, on 3. 1, 2, and another yank, and suddenly Jenna's upper half is pulled into the stove. I lose my balance and fall back on my butt, knocking my head against the metal stove. My eyes water, and I let go with one hand, desperately rubbing at the back of my head, while I loosely keep a grip on Jenna with the other. Chase! Raven's actually sliding into the fireplace himself at this point. I try to get my bearings and pull myself back up next to Jenna, but at that point, something big and bulky comes barreling into the room. My vision clears just in time to see the big ram reach in for Jenna's body, practically pushing Raven aside. His horns clank loudly against the stove as he wraps his arms around Jenna's body and pulls back with all of his 270 pounds behind it. The fox emerges slowly, both of her arms still stuck in the stove, a determined look still on her face. Carl lets go for half a second, lunging forward to grab both of Jenna's elbows. He yanks back again, letting out a strained grunt. As her wrists emerge from the stove, I get a glance at the black tendrils wrapped around them before those tendrils suddenly disappear. Carl and Jenna are both launched back, Jenna getting a cushioned landing on top of the ram as Carl lets out a loud wheeze. I hobble over to them, kneeling next to Carl as Jenna rolls off of him, eliciting another grunt. She sits up while Carl continues to lay there, his eyes wide. You guys okay? Carl waves a hand at me, rolling over onto his side as he gasps breathlessly. Jenna sits next to him, holding her hands up. I can already see some nasty swelling under the fur covering her wrists. I wince. Jenna, are you alright? I'm fine. She's not looking at her wrists, though. Instead, it's at an ash-smudged folded piece of paper in her hands. From the bits that aren't covered, I can see that the paper is yellowed and ancient-looking. Not at all like the clearly photocopied newspaper we'd seen earlier. Jenna looks down at it, standing up. I hear a groan next to me and turn back to Carl. Can a day go without getting beat up? I rub his shoulder as I look down at him, smiling. Wow, that was kind of heroic. Carl grunts as he sits up. You think so? Yeah, all at the last second, too. Carl rubs his knees. Would have gotten here earlier if I hadn't tripped down the stairs like twice. He stares at the stove. What the hell was that? I look too, into the yawning black hole, and shiver. I don't know. It was all black and smoky, like what we saw before. Think it'll come out of there? Raven suddenly steps in to lift up the stove door, twisting the handle to lock it. He yelps as he does it, jumping back as soon as the deed is done. I chuckle, then look back at Carl. Over his shoulder, Jenna walks into my field of vision. The paper is open in her hands, and she's holding it over the candle. All at once, I realize what she's trying to do. I choke on what I'm about to say and leap up awkwardly onto my injured ankle. Jenna! Luckily, Jenna's only about 5 feet away, and I practically fall into her, pushing her away from the candle. We both fall against the bench under the window. Jenna's hands smack against my nose, bringing tears to my eyes. I yelp as she pulls her fingers in, raking lines of fire down my nose with her claws. There's a pounding in my ears, and I distinctly register that the drums have started up again. She twists out from under me and pulls away from the bench. When the fuck did she get this strong? I numbly keep my grip on her wrists, and she spins, swinging me away from her. I lose my grip and stumble back, stepping wrong on my foot and rebending my ankle the exact same way I did last time. I yelp again, much more loudly this time, as I crumble to the ground. Carl swears and jumps over me at Jenna. Wait! I try to grab him by the hoof that it's passing over me, but I miss miserably. As I sit up, I hear an ungodly bestial snarling, and I look up to see Carl wrestling and kicking and scratching Jenna to the ground. That is fucking it! He pins her there while she writhes under him, trying to scratch at his face. Stop it, guys! Raven is still standing off to the side, his paws on his head, pulling at his ears. I crawl over to their writhing bodies, one eye wincing shut as each movement sends a lightning bolt through my leg. I grab at Jenna's hand, forcing them down above her head. Jenna, stop! Jenna suddenly kicks one of her legs up between Carl's legs as he kneels over her. Fuck! He crumbles on top of Jenna, lying on her legs as he tries to pin her thighs together. I look down to see Jenna's face. Stop it! What the hell are you doing? Jenna snarls up at me, but it's softer this time. Her struggling dies down a little, and after holding my gaze for about 10 seconds, she looks away. I relax my grip a bit, gasping as I try to rearrange my foot so there's not so much pressure on my ankle. I don't know. I pull the piece of paper out from her limp fingers and push away from her, waiting to see if she'll come after me again. She doesn't, instead just laying there with her hands above her head, staring at the ceiling. Raven, still with his fingers twisted around his ears, looks over at me. Yeah? Take Jenna upstairs. Take a nap or something. I think we need to be kept separate for now. As Raven hurries over to Jenna, Carl rolls off with a groan. Raven's easily able to coax Jenna up off the floor, and they head upstairs, Jenna looking down at the floor all the while. I scoot over to Carl, holding my breath as each drag sends another spasm through my leg. He's on his side, hands between his legs as he squints at the wall. Once he notices me, he looks at my ankle. Fuck, are you okay, man? No, I don't think so. I stepped on it wrong again. God damn it, what the fuck is your problem? It's okay, but you're gonna have to carry me again. Carl chuckles before letting out another, softer groan. What did I say about getting beat up all the time? Are you okay? No, she kicked me in the fucking balls. I sit quietly for a moment, the pain in my ankle fading into a more cold, electric sting rather than molten lava. What the hell is going on? Why would she try to burn it? Carl is quiet for a moment, then he looks up at me again. You know, right? What? I could be wrong since nothing makes sense here. What? You know this probably has something to do with James and John. I rubbed the back of my head again, feeling a bump swell up already. Didn't we already figure that's what's going on? I mean, with Jenna. You know how James was sort of talking to me? Yeah, like he told you what to find. Yeah, but I think something is talking to Jenna too. John? Maybe. To make you guys fight? Weren't they lovers? Would there be a reason for John wanting this paper not to be read? Carl doesn't say anything, choosing to roll onto his back and lay his hands out to either side of him. I look down at the paper in my hand. Well, should I read this now or wait for the others? Might as well do it now. She might try something again. Alright, I'm gonna read it out loud then. Carl waves a hand in the air, indicating that I should go ahead. I scoot back against the wall so I can stretch my legs out, then start reading. My dearest John, I've been hearing terrible things lately. They say that you've been accusing me of the most egregious monstrosities. I dare not believe them. In fact, I will not until I hear your words for myself. There must be some misunderstanding. Has one of my many political enemies pitted you against me? Are they using the missing native boys as a weapon against my campaign? I would not think that to be below them, but what concerns me most is you. Please, visit me at my mansion. We must speak on this. I very much look forward to your company, and believe that we can soon set this straight. Yours forever, James. I look up at Carl. He looks back at me. So, what do you think that means? Carl rubs inconspicuously at his crotch. I guess something went wrong between James and John? Well, yeah, but what? It sounds like he tried to frame him or something. I remember the newspaper clipping that had somehow gone up in flames. Hey, that newspaper article that burned up said something about a Meseta kid that went missing? So, native kids going missing and John used it to get at James somehow? Maybe. Maybe. We still don't know if John was doing it anyway. James doesn't seem to know either. I wonder if we'd been better off if Carl had a little bit of James in him right now. At least, then we'd had a better idea of what is going on, maybe. Then again, the situation is so volatile with Jenna that I'm kind of glad we don't have another ghost to deal with in Carl. I look at the ram who's in the middle of pulling his waistband out to look at his junk. If James is still influencing Carl somehow, then he really isn't showing it. You okay? Carl abruptly lets go of his waistband, letting it snap back against his waist. Yeah, I'm fine. Are your, balls okay? Carl smiles ruefully. They look fine. Still kind of hurt. I think about making a joke about making them feel better, but that doesn't really feel appropriate right now. I'm actually more worried about Jenna, and not just because she can beat me up. Yeah. It seems that, at this point, Jenna isn't really Jenna anymore. Should we talk to her about, I don't know, resisting it? It's worked for me. I look in the direction of the door as a loud click emanates from it. Carl's long ears perk, and he follows my gaze. We both stare at it for a few seconds. Do you think? Maybe? Slowly, Carl gets to his feet, still a little bow-legged, and hobbles towards the door. Careful, I say, a little apprehensive that something might open it from the other side. Carl doesn't say anything and slowly shuffles towards the door, pausing in front of it for a few seconds. Slowly, he reaches out and rests a hand on the handle, then gives it a slight push. It shifts open a few inches. Carl looks back at me. I think we should get the others. We all stand around the door, Carl to my right and Raven to my left, Raven and I making sure there's a maximum distance between Jenna and Carl. The door is still shifted open a few inches, and the vertical black void it reveals is a little ominous. So we just go through? I don't know, man. That's what we did last time, right? Yeah. I feel like the real question is if we really want to go through the door in the first place. Is it just going to lead us to another terrible place where terrible things happen? I feel a void similar to the one that I'm looking at open up in my chest. The thought of being trapped in a loop, going through door after door that leads us to nothing but horror. Already this place was having an effect on Jenna that seems to be getting worse with each passing hour. How much longer can she keep it together? What did the letter say? I tense up. Anything she does now is putting me on edge, like I'm just waiting for her to lash out again. My hand drifts conspiratorially to my pocket where the folded up letter is. I glance to my right at Carl, but he's got his eyes on the door. A few things, just more history stuff. About what? I decide at that moment that I have to lie. We need to keep Jenna or John calm if we want to get through this. I have a feeling that John, wouldn't want to hear about James revealing what I assume are secrets. I didn't read anything about John trying to sabotage James in my research, but maybe that's what James is trying to tell us. So I shrug my shoulders, moving my hand away from my pocket. Stuff about the mine, how, there wasn't enough of it to sustain the town. I'm worried Jenna might challenge my lie, for whatever reason. She doesn't say anything though, and Carl just keeps on staring straight ahead. Raven suddenly claps his hands together, making Carl and I jump. So, shall we open it? Raven reaches out. Wait! The husky pauses and looks back at me expectantly, his black ears tipped forward. Should we do this? I mean, it's probably just gonna lead to another place where we have to find another thing. Yeah? So maybe we shouldn't keep going? I stumble over my words, trying to piece together my feelings and put them into sentences as I go. I just think that they're not really on our side, you know? I make an effort not to look at Jenna. So if they're not, why are we doing what they want us to do? I realize that I'm shaking now, and I make an effort to make my hands still. That's when I feel something big and warm slide into my right hand, and I glance down to find Carl holding it. He gives me a quick look and a small smile before returning his attention back to the door. What else should we do? Raven's tone isn't accusatory, but it is genuinely curious. I don't have a very good answer. Well, maybe we can find a way back somehow. Maybe we're still in Carl's house right now. Carl's house. That place seems like it's thousands of miles and years away at this point. Maybe we can, wake ourselves up somehow. Raven doesn't respond, and neither does anyone else. I realize how stupid I must sound. Sorry. I just feel like we're taking things fast right now. Carl gives my hand another squeeze. Hey dude, we're all a little scared. We can talk about things. Carl looks past me at Raven and Jenna. No rush. I'm actually starting to feel the same way. I feel my cheeks burn at the way I'm holding everyone back because I'm scared. So, when I had that guy in my head, I sort of felt like he was taking us somewhere. Carl runs the hand not holding mine up one of his horns, scratching at it. Like at an endpoint, you know? Raven fidgets with one of his ears. Like a good endpoint? Yeah man, I think so. That didn't sound very convincing. You can stay here if you want, Otter. It takes me a second to realize that she's talking to me. Is she really that gone? I just hope that if we reach the end of this, we can get her back somehow. Whoa, Jenna, that's crazy. I cough to clear my throat. No, I'll go. I just wanted to think about it for a second. Have you thought about it then? Yeah. I look at Carl, but he only offers me a shrug and a comforting rub on my shoulder. Well, If that's all then, let's go. Jenna steps forward to grab the door handle, and I bite my tongue to keep from saying that we should wait again. The door swings open to reveal blackness, just like the last time. Unlike the last time, though, there's a spot of flickering light in the distance. The fire. Everything's quiet right now, no drumbeat, but the darkness is unnatural. It's inky and thick, like it's alive. I get the unnerving feeling that it's trying to eat the light from the fire. Maybe towards the fire? Jenna suddenly steps forward, and just like that, she's swallowed by the darkness. Jenna, wait! She ignores me. Carl gives his shoulders another shrug. Well, if she's being, persuaded, I guess she probably knows where she's going. I see her form pass in front of the firelight a few times, then she's gone. Alright, here we go. Despite his nervousness, Raven still sounds cheerful about stepping into oblivion. You ready, dude? I look over at Carl, and he's gazing back at me warmly, an encouraging smile on his face. Dude, I'm reaching my limits too. If we have to do another place like this... His ears droop, looking almost defeated. I nod, swallowing as quietly as I can. He pulls me into his side by my hand and wraps my arm around his shoulder. Just stay close, okay? Yeah. I step forward with him, and immediately we're immersed in blackness. Not only do things go dark visually, but the change is physical too. I don't know if it's all in my head, but I feel heavier, like the darkness is pushing down on my shoulders. It's colder too, to the point where I can feel the heat radiating off of Carl's body when I brush up against him. Doing okay, man? Yeah, you? Yeah, I'm good. The going is slow, and not just because of my injured, probably broken ankle. The ground is uneven and rocky, like we're outside walking in the desert. Which I realize is exactly what we're doing when we walk straight into what feels like sagebrush. Carl thrashes around with his hand not holding onto me, and we're able to sort of stumble around it. Where the hell are we? I mutter as I stump my toe painfully on a rock. Outside? Yeah, but where outside? The desert, right? So do you think that we're still an echo? Carl's quiet for a moment. Maybe, but not really. I mean, I don't think we can just walk to our houses. I wonder if maybe all the others, TJ, Leo, and Flynn, are out here, too, in the darkness. I want to call out, but I'm too nervous that that's going to attract something else. I still remember the black figure dancing around the fire we're walking towards at the very moment. We're close enough now that I'm starting to be able to make out Carl in the darkness. I look back at the house to see how far we've gone. All that I can make out now are two rectangles of light. One for the door that we came out of, and one for the kitchen window. In the latter, a dark figure stands framed by the faint light inside. I squint, not really sure what I'm seeing. Then it moves, disappearing from the window. I stop walking, and Carl stops with me, looking back over his shoulder. What? I don't... Did one of the others go back? The black figure appears again, this time in the doorway of the house. I don't even have time to react to that before it steps forward, and the door swings shut with a distant snap. Oppressive blackness takes its place. I grab onto Carl more tightly. What the hell? My mind flashes back to the black thing I'd seen crawling out the wardrobe. Come on. I nudge into Carl's side, trying to get him to hurry along while resisting the urge to try and run on my twisted ankle. I'm realizing that it might come to that. Raven! Jenna! I call out into the darkness ahead of us, wanting to warn them. Over our ragged breathing, though, there's dead silence all around us except for a drumbeat. Either they don't hear us, or they can't respond. Carl's gripping onto me with both of his hands, practically hauling me off my feet as he pulls me along. Suddenly, he stops. What the fuck am I doing? He lets go and crouches down in front of me. On my back! I'm there before he even finishes his sentence, and soon my face is bouncing off his hard skull as he starts sprinting towards the fire. Whether it's in my head or not, I swear I can hear a slithering sound behind me, like a snake sliding over dry leaves. A shiver, not wanting to look back, but I do anyway, trying to peer into the darkness. Of course, I can't see anything, but I swear something flashes in front of the lone rectangle of light coming from the cabin's kitchen window. The rustling sound gets louder, and now I can't pretend that I'm imagining it. It casts a picture into my mind. That black shadow creature contorting and bending through the sagebrush that Carl was having so much trouble moving through. I hold onto one of his horns and lean towards his ear. Carl, it's getting close. And then my stomach lurches as it feels like the floor just suddenly drops away. Next thing I know, my nose smacks hard into the back of Carl's head before I flip over, landing on my back in what feels like a sea of sharp rocks. I lay there for a second, dazed, staring at the black ocean above me, wondering if any of this is real. Am I still dreaming? Maybe I'll just wake up in my dorm, probably late to my legal and ethics issues in journalism class. Fuck, are you okay? A muffled voice breaks through my haze of confusion and pain. Then I'm being yanked back up as Carl pulls me to my feet and clumsily shoves me back on his back. Sorry, sorry. I'm fine. I can barely mumble through my numb mouth, which feels like it's full of pennies. I can see I'm making dark stains on the back of Carl's shirt. It feels like my face is caved in. I wonder if my nose is broken, but the fear of the pursuit is returning and I quickly clutch at Carl's horns before he resumes his sprint. He finally goes to a stumbling halt in front of the massive bonfire, which had looked so small from the cabin. We both stare at it, the heat almost unbearable. The whispers behind me reach a crescendo, the hissing just over my shoulder. What are we supposed to do? My voice raises in a pitch as I look back behind us, the black shape now discernible in the firelight as it slithers around the rocks and sagebrush. It's like a person imitating a snake. I grip onto Carl as he turns to face it, then takes a step back, then another. I don't know. I cling to the ram, and I can feel him trembling underneath me. As the creature reaches the edge of the circle of firelight, Carl turns and starts running past the fire. And then my muscles seize up, my jaw clenching, my eyes roll back, and I feel myself falling backwards. The heat is almost unbearable, and my fur is damp from sweat, the skin underneath itching and uncomfortable. I can feel the sun on my face, the brightness turning the insides of my eyelids a dazzling red. I don't want to open them though, no, I just want to sleep. I almost do fall asleep, but a distant chorus of shouts and screams jolts me back awake. Now I do try to open my eyes, but I can't. It's like they're glued shut. I reach up a paw at them, but my arms won't lift. I must be dreaming, stuck in a paralysis. So I lay there, listening to the shouting and screaming, imagining an angry mob. After what seems like hours, the voices fade, and the red turns deeper, darker, blood-like, as if the sun is setting. And that's when I can finally drift away, back to sleep. A soft, choking moan brings me back to the surface. I'm still hot and sweaty, but the blazing sun isn't shining in my face anymore. I wiggle my fingers and shift my arms a bit, feeling them glide over the fabric. At least, I'm not paralyzed anymore. Another moan, followed by a coughing sound, forces me to open my eyes, realizing that it's not part of the dream. I stare up at the ceiling, a textured beige ceiling. I'm back in the room where I'd slept. How long ago? A day? A few days? It doesn't matter because everything comes back to me all at once. I feel like a lead weight just dropped onto my chest, knocking the wind out of me. Fuck, is this not over? Now I'm starting to become convinced that this is never going to end. We're stuck in a loop, just like in my dreams. Another moan, slightly weaker, makes me sit up and look around the room. I'm alone as far as I can tell. Where are the others? Am I actually alone? I can't stop a soft whimper coming from my mouth at the thought of being separated from the others. I was barely keeping it together with Carl, but without him? A loud cough through the wall behind me makes me jump again. I quickly slide off the bed and immediately cringe as my weight comes to rest on my swollen ankle. I sag against the bed for a moment, squinting my eyes shut as I wonder why my ankle is only getting stiffer. Maybe the fall Carl had taken made it even worse. The thought that those moans could be coming from Carl spurs me to straighten up and carefully hop towards the door. I have to stifle a short yelp with every bounce, and by the time I reach the door frame, I have to lean against it to catch my breath. My hands shake as I rub my eyes, the pain making me wonder if I'll ever be able to walk without a limp again. Another groan from the room next to me forces me to move again. In the hallway now, I'm able to make out the sounds a bit better, and I realize that it has a feminine quality to it. Jenna? My voice comes out as a crackling squeak and I grunt to clear my throat. Jenna? I try again and wait, but I get no response in return. I force myself to step into the hallway, clinging to the wall for support. When I look down at the hall to the door next to mine, I find something very familiar. A damaged wooden door, the middle bulging and splintered out as if something hard had hit it from the other side. Memories of a bad smell, a dark concrete room, and a noose. I hold tighter to the doorframe, feeling my knees tremble, both from the pain and the fear. I look behind me, hoping to see Carl, maybe even Raven. A shuffling sound followed by another cough and gurgle draws my eyes back to the door. If it's Jenna, I have to act now. I steady myself against the wall as I hop slowly to the door, eyes watering with the pain now. Reaching out with a shaking hand, I start to slowly push at the door. I'm hoping that I might be able to crack it open just a little bit and not draw the attention of whatever is inside. The door only shifts a little, though, and seems to catch on the ground underneath it. It lets out a loud, rough scratching sound that makes my fur raise up. Gritting my teeth, I forego the stealthy approach and give it a hard shove. This time it opens halfway and I'm able to see into the room. Just like last time, there's no light coming from within the room itself. Instead, I have to rely on the dim yellow light coming from the hallway. It casts a widening band of light into the concrete room as the door opens. The smell hits me like a wave and I immediately gag, doubling over and pressing a hand to my nose before pulling up the neck of my shirt over my nose. Sure, I smell like BO from 2 days of running in fear, but it's better than the sweet smell of rotting meat that's enveloping me. Still shaking, I peer into the room while I lean against the door, but I'm only able to see the cracked concrete floor and walls. The grunting, choking sound reach a peak now, and it's coming from beyond the band of light. It's an inky blackness that isn't all that different from what Carl and I had run through. Hello? No response. It sounds like the grunting has stopped too. Shit, I have to do something now. I think about just kicking the door open and jumping back, but then I remember there's really nothing I can do with my feet right now. Taking a deep breath, I set both hands against the door. I steel myself for whatever I'm about to see, then shove the door as hard as I can. The door swings in suddenly, scraping horribly against the floor the entire way. I yelp at the suddenness of it all, the tension all exploding out of me at once as I jump back in fear. The band of light widens, sweeping over the entirety of the concrete room before the door finally lodges against the wall with a snapping sound. I almost lose my balance, arms swinging around cartoonishly as I try to hop on one foot. At the same time, I'm fearfully eyeing the opening, terrified of what I'm about to see. And what I do see is definitely terrifying. It's Jenna, in the middle of the room. She's hanging from the noose, her muzzle tilted up so that I'm able to clearly see the rope digging into the fur around her neck, painfully tight. Her toes are barely touching the floor, but it doesn't even look like she's trying to keep herself up. It looks like she's unconscious. Jenna! There's no response and I find myself leaping in her direction. I forget about my ankle until all the weight comes down on it twice in my mad dash, and I literally scream as it happens. There isn't any time to worry about it though, as I grab at Jenna, unsure of what to do. First, I try to wrap my arms around her and lift her head up, screaming again as I set my weight down on my foot. She doesn't respond to any of this and just hangs limp in my arms, which terrifies me even more. I reach up and pluck uselessly at the hangman's knot that I immediately know isn't going to budge no matter how much I pull. Carl! Carl, help! I feel myself starting to panic. Desperately, I look around, trying to find something, anything I might be able to use to cut the rope. Jenna? I call up to her. I can't see her eyes from this angle, but I can't feel any movement in her. I try to press my ears against her chest, but I'm not sure if I'm doing it in the right spot. I try to quiet my breathing and actually listen, but I still can't hear anything. Shit! Carl! I feel myself start to hyperventilate and try again to slow my breathing. If I pass out right now, I'm going to be less help than I already am. The world is starting to take a surreal tint, and I think I'm actually dreaming. I think about running to the kitchen, but I don't want to let her go, especially since I feel like she's on the edge of dying right now. I reach up again and start trying to worm my fingers underneath the rope, but it's useless. It's way too tight. My eyes start to water as I realize that I'm not helping her at all right now, aside from maybe taking a little pressure off her neck. But it might be too late anyway. Help! I'm suddenly hyper aware of the screaming pain in my ankle, and I feel it giving out. So are my arms, burning with the strain of trying to hold up Jenna. I press my face against her chest, feeling myself start to give up on everything. And then suddenly the weight disappears, and I feel Jenna lift up several inches into the air. I look up and see Carl next to me, his big arms easily able to keep the fox off the ground. Not only that, but he's got a knife in one hand. I recognize it as the same knife Carl had used earlier in the hallway. Carl! I sob with relief as he sets to sawing at the rope, and soon all three of us come crashing to the ground as Jenna is cut free. We lay there in a heaving heap. The only sound is our gasps as we all try to catch our breaths, Jenna being the loudest. After a while, I sit up and look over at her. She's already sitting up herself, one hand to her neck, rubbing at it. Are you okay? I reach out to her. I'm fine. She leans away a little from my hand, so I drop it. I thought you were gonna die, Jenna. My voice is all shuddery and I struggle to keep my emotions under control, to not have a panic attack. Whatever was controlling this whole scenario just tried to kill one of us. But then I guess that's already happened with that shadow creature thing, and even with what's happened to Raven. Jenna picks up the knife and brings it up to her neck, starting to saw away at the rope. I can help. She ignores me. I look over at Carl and see that he's flat on his back, arms spread out. Thank you, Carl. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't shown up. Carl raises a hand in acknowledgement. How the hell did you get a knife? Carl takes a few more gasps to catch his breath. I heard you guys and saw that. He gestures up at the hanging rope, the end of it frizzed out after the cut. Remembered that knife I dropped when we were here before. Thank God. We lay there a little while longer, Jenna busy hacking at the rope, Carl choosing to stare up at the ceiling. That almost peaceful silence is shattered as a husky stumbles into the doorframe, clutching onto it as he practically trips in. Whoa! Hey guys! He grins, waving a hand at us as he rights himself. He looks around at us, taking in the scene. What happened? Jenna got hanged. Carl cut her down. There's really no way to sugarcoat it. Oh crap! He stares wide-eyed at Jenna. Well, I guess it's surprising it wasn't me this time, huh? He lets out a high-pitched, nervous laugh. None of us even cracks a smile. You're okay, though? Fine. Raven looks around the room. Well, it looks like we're still here. Carl lets out a big, shuddery breath. I don't know if I can do this anymore. What do you mean? We're stuck. I don't know what else we're supposed to do. Just keep looking around. We'll find stuff, right? And then what? Get sucked into another fucked up place where we'll be chased around and almost killed? He waves his hand in Jenna's direction. Look at what happened. It wants us dead. Carl. I trail off. What? I try to think of something to say, anything that might convince the ram to keep going. Just a while ago, minutes, hours, days, I was having the same doubts. But for some reason, Carl's sudden demeanor of defeat has me more motivated. Because if Carl gives up, what else is there to keep me going? There's a soft snap and I look over to see that Jenna's pulled a rope from her throat. How's your neck? Jenna rubs it. Fine. Her voice has an air of complete disinterest despite the situation. She seems distracted too, her eyes flicking around at the ceiling, like she's expecting something to happen up there. I look up too, but all I see is the concrete that's spiderwebbed with cracks. The rope, I notice, is hanging from nothing. It sort of just grows out of the ceiling. Carl lets out another sigh next to me. Wish I had a joint. I feel a small flicker of annoyance. And how will that help anything? Carl quiets for a moment, clearly sensing the change in my mood. I immediately regret it, but I don't have the energy to take it back. Because it might make me feel a little better. By making you feel less, we need to be alert right now, so we can figure this out. I bring my tone back down to normal, realizing how unfair it would be if I get mad at Carl right now. I don't know if we can though. Carl's lips tug down at a frown, and it looks like he's trying to keep himself from crying. Before I can say anything to comfort him, Jenna speaks up. You will. Her voice is dark, firm, and completely unlike the way Jenna has ever spoken before. We both look at her, and she sits there, legs crossed, staring hard at us. Well, at me. Carl sits up. Jenna. Jenna doesn't look at him. Instead, she keeps looking at me. John? Now she looks at Carl. It's out of instinct, her eyes darting to him before looking back at me. I recognize it as that almost unstoppable urge to look the way you hear your name being called. Yeah, we'd suspected, and Jenna had been acting weird, but to think that she was that consumed by him? Carl glances at me meaningfully. We haven't asked her directly about it yet, so I guess now's the time. Hey Jenna, are you feeling okay? I'm feeling fine. It's just that you haven't seemed like yourself for a while now. What do you mean? I look over at Carl as he shifts around on the floor. Listen, when we first got here, and even a little before then, I was feeling weird. Carl pauses as he seems to be searching for the right words. Sort of like something else had become a part of me. Jenna narrows her eyes at Carl, but doesn't say anything. There was another voice in my head, almost, and after a while, I knew it was that guy James, in my head. Sounds like you're going crazy. Carl frowns. Maybe, but he was making me act different, like, feel different, and it was kind of fucked up to be honest. Weird. Yeah, weird. But it was easy to get him out of my head. Carl points at his horns. And now he's not there anymore. Jenna keeps that stern look on her face, frowning at Carl. What are you trying to say? Well, do you know a guy named John Begay? Not really. You keep mentioning him, but no one's told me who he is, aside from the fact that he was hanged. I remember the picture that I had taken of John back in Carl's crawl space. My hands feel my phone through my pocket as I almost reach in to pull it out before remembering that he's dead. He was in some of the pictures with James Hendricks, the founder of the town. Jenna stares at me blankly. James was Carl's ancestor, right? We think that John was your ancestor too. He was a fox and has the same last name. So wasn't your family an echo since the beginning? Yes. So it seems like you're probably related to him, right? Jenna stares hard at me, then at Carl. Our family doesn't have records like yours, Carl. Carl frowns again. You say it like it's my fault. Maybe it is. Carl starts to sputter again, but I cut in before he can defend himself. See? Jenna doesn't talk like that. You wouldn't say something like that. Jenna doesn't say anything, keeping up her glare at Carl. Carl clears his throat nervously. What I'm trying to say is that maybe your ancestor is in your head, like mine was. I don't think so. Carl lets out a frustrated sigh. I mean, something's different with you, dude. I can see it. Chase sees it. I nod in confirmation. Raven suddenly cuts in. I mean, I don't know you that well, but if we're going by how a normal person acts, you're not acting very normal. We're not in a normal situation like that, are we? Carl shakes his head. I know you can resist it like I did, Jenna. You've always had a really strong mind, way stronger than mine. Carl swallows. So it shouldn't be a problem for you to stop it like I did. Jenna shrugs. Nothing's wrong with me, Carl. We all go quiet then. Besides, isn't this about clearing James's name or whatever? Why are we talking about John? Jenna stares at Carl, eyes moving across his face like she's searching for something. Carl stares hard right back at her. Unless you don't want to fight it? Jenna's expression remains emotionless. I mean, are you letting him? I don't know, Carl. Are you letting him control you? No, I already told you I fought him out. How do we know that's true? Carl throws his hands up. Dude, why would I lie? Carl looks at me for some help. Yeah, Carl's way different than he was earlier. He's himself now. How do you know that? I don't know what else to say to Jenna to convince her. Of course, I can't be completely sure. The only person that can know is Carl. He says he isn't possessed anymore, and I trust him on that. Jenna, he isn't, I promise. You think James kept his promises? Carl and I share a look. Jenna, what do you mean by that? A strange look crosses Jenna's face, breaking out of the stoic detachment she's been portraying for the last however long it's been. It's confused, but it's also like she wants to say something with her mouth open. Jenna? She seems to be frozen like that for a moment before she seems to finally give up, shaking her head. I don't know. She glares at Carl. He blanches defensively. What? You keep acting like it's my fault. Maybe it is. This time Raven cuts in before Carl can say anything. Is James stopping John from saying something? I watch Jenna closely, and that's when she finally looks away. I don't know. Jenna, are John and James upset with one another? Jenna shrugs, not looking at me. Carl lets out a sigh of frustration. Jenna, we need to figure this out. Listen, I don't know much about these guys, but it sounds like James and John are trying to tell us something. Raven looks back and forth between Carl and Jenna. And trying to stop the other one from telling us something. I rub my face with my hands, feeling frustrated, just wishing these two assholes could just tell us what it is that they wanted to say. So they're trying to tell us something about the past, and they both don't want us to know what the other knows. Maybe that's what we're supposed to figure out? So it's not as simple as just clearing James's name. John has something to say too, and he sure as hell wants us to hear it. I close my eyes. We're stuck in the middle of a possessed ghost fight with each of them trying to tell us their version of the story. The whole thing seems ridiculously insane, but I really don't have anything else to go off of. Did you find anything about them in the crawl space? I try to think back. Like I said, they both got convicted of sodomy. John was hanged, and James left to start an ice cream business. So why wasn't James hanged too? His influence in the town, probably. Well, I can see how that might cause problems between the two of them. I look over at Carl, who's still looking at Jenna. Jenna's picking at the rope in her lap. Hey, did James tell you anything while you were under his influence? Like, did he say anything? Carl rubs his chin. Not really. It's weird. I just sort of felt different. Like I said things I wouldn't normally say, but I guess I never really heard any voices. There isn't much more to talk about at this point. Unless one of the spirits decides to do something else that can help us along somehow. So, what are we supposed to do next exactly? Raven points at the back of the room. There's a door there. We all look in the direction that he's pointing. Sure enough, there was a door there. It's a concrete door practically cut out of the wall. It's featureless aside from a rusty metal handle. What? Was that there before? I think I would have seen it the first time I looked in. Jenna stands up, taking a few steps towards the door. What, so we're supposed to go through another door? Carl's laying back down on the floor on his back, staring up at the ceiling again. I can understand where he's coming from. Another door to possibly another nightmare. But his sudden reluctance is making it easier for me to find the strength to keep going. I reach out, resting a hand on his. Carl, this might be the last one. It might be the way out. Carl snorts. Seriously, dude? You think they're just gonna let us go? We've accomplished nothing. We can leave you here if you'd prefer. I glare at Jenna, but she's not even looking at me, instead staring at the concrete door. Carl, we have to keep moving. If we go through another door, we're at least going somewhere. Yeah, and besides, the bad stuff only happened to me and Jenna, so you guys probably have nothing to worry about. We can't stay here forever. I gently stroke the back of Carl's furry hand. He laughs again. Maybe we could. Could just keep pulling grilled cheese sandwiches out of the cupboard. Carl props himself up on his elbows. Who knows? Maybe I can get some weed out of there. Carl looks back out into the hallway, apparently seriously considering that. Come on, man. We're all going together. I reach out both of my hands to him expectingly, since I can't get up on my own. Carl stares at them contemplatively for a moment, then finally gets to his feet while pulling me up onto his back with a loud grunt. Alright, man, but if this freaking spooky ghost dimension goes on for another fucking door, I'm gonna pull out a joint from the magic cupboard. Of course. Jenna's already standing in front of the door. Man, I don't want to pass out again. We just did that. I look back towards the hallway. You know, maybe we should check the rest. Jenna reaches forward to grab up the metal handle, and, before any of us can say anything more, she yanks it open. A trail leads through the desert landscape, and cacti and boulders obscure my view on either side. The ground is rocky and dust kicks up with each step I take. As I continue up the path, I can see the 3 peaks of Casa Demonio Mountains in front of me. I'm heading towards the town of Echo, just over the mountains. As I get closer, I notice that the trail branches off towards the side of the mountain. I follow the trail with my eyes into the hazy distance, almost disappearing into the heat waves. Still, I can make out a small dark hole, the mine. Some things should be left alone. Dust swirls silently at the mouth of the mine, almost sparkling in the bright noon light. Every single person here. Something seems to pulse out of the entrance, sending an almost visible wave through the air. You will never escape. You will always come back. Red seeps from the hole, running up the side of the mountain in a wave, turning rock and dust the color of blood. You'll always be running in circles. I start jogging up the trail, panting in the desert heat, not sure what I'm doing. The sky in front of me lights up that same ominous red color in the direction of Echo. Somehow, I'm able to scale the side of the mountain just in seconds. I get to the peak and look over the edge. I see the town, but it's not the town that I remember. At least, not all of it. Lake Emma is in the distance to the left. The motel and supermarket are to the right. But the ruins by the lake aren't just old foundation remnants anymore. They're fully standing now, with their logs, walls, and roofs. Several dozen more houses run up the side of the lake, standing in stark contrast to the more modern buildings further away towards Main Street. There are even a few buildings that I don't recognize. And there, just below me, is Carl's house. But it's different. The mansion is bigger. The walls are a lighter color. It looks older. Somehow I'm already there, just like I teleported straight down to stand on the road in front of Carl's house. I stare down the slope towards the town, and there, next to the road, is a wooden platform built under a tree. There's a rope hanging from the tree, a noose. I look back down at the town, at all the different buildings. But no matter which structure I'm looking at, one thing's the same. They're all lit up blood red. I watch as what looks like spinning blades come slowly into focus above me. I tense up, but only for a moment as I realize what it is. A ceiling fan. Wait, a ceiling fan? Isn't that... I sit up quickly, only to immediately swoon as the room starts to spin around me. I grip onto whatever I'm sitting on, and it happens to be soft and smooth. I look down and see that I'm on top of a blue comforter. To my left, Jenna, Raven, and Carl are stretched out next to me on a king-size bed. To my right, sunshine streams in from the sliding glass doors, outside of which is a massive deck. Past the porch are the mountains and the desert of Echo. We're back. Oh my god, we're back! And that's where I'm gonna leave it for today. So it looks like they're out of the ghost dimension, or at least out of the old-timey version of the ghost dimension, because they appear to be in a modern bed, in a modern room, with a ceiling fan. So hopefully that's it for now, for them, dealing with ghosts. I mean, it's not, obviously, but still. There's one more episode left. So yeah. Poor Carl getting picked on by a possessed Jenna, and poor Raven for, being picked on by ghosts in general. But yeah. Oh well. Anyways, thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play Echo yourself, there will be a link down in the description. If you would like to support the Echo project and get early access to all of their other ongoing stuff, then I will put a link down for their Patreon. And I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.